This man planted one seedling of wheat in the ground. A day later, the straw began to grow rapidly. Eventually, it grew to over 100 meters high. It produced tens of thousands of tons of grain. The man who had been poor became the richest of the rich. But during the day, he still lived in poverty. The family kept a dog and 3 chickens, living on the 1 acre of land. The only food we eat is brown rice. Despite this, he still believes that if he works hard, he will get better. But life doesn't always work out the way you want it to. He couldn't breathe after 1 puff of a cigarette. He had to be carried home by the animals. The old dog waited on him day and night. He thought he was well enough to work, but his tired body would not allow him to move. He had to drink his medicine and go to sleep. The animals could not bear to disturb him. They retreated to the yard. At this point, the man kept thinking about the wheat. He was worried that weeds would grow and kill all the wheat seedlings. The man dragged himself to his feet, but he was too weak. He soon collapsed in front of the door. The animals immediately carried him back to the house. By now, the wheat in the field was becoming withered. It had lost its vitality. After a week had passed, the farmer was completely cured. He took his tools and went to the field, and found that his fears had been fulfilled. All the wheat had withered and died. Looking at the corpses of the wheat seedlings before him, the man sat crouched in the ground. He looks around him, and found a sapling that was still standing. He crawled over to it with a feeling of excitement. Tears poured down his face like rain. He hated himself for smoking and for causing the attack. And so all the wheat seedlings withered and died. The tears flowed down the leaves into the ground. Suddenly a huge earthy structure appears. He was the god of the earth in this land. The god of the land told him, "It's not your fault. If you take care of the wheat saplings, then you will harvest millions of tons of grain." The man looked at the god of the land with astonishment. How can a sapling produce 10,000 tons of grain? But there was nothing else to do. He could only believe the god of the land's words. When the land left, the men rooted out all the other wheat around this sapling. He found bamboo poles to secure the bottom of the sapling. In order to take care of this wheat, the man cut down a large tree to make a small wooden hut for his temporary home. The other animals help him to get more grain for the harvest. They help the man to water the wheat. The well-tended wheat began to grow rapidly. The wheat seedlings were expected to grow to the sky. But then at night, suddenly there was a rainstorm. The saplings swayed in the storm. It was about to break. Without hesitation, the man rushed out in the pouring rain to clear the floodwaters from the field. Then he took off his own clothes to protect the wheat saplings. And so, he spent the night in the rain protecting the saplings. By the next day, the saplings broke free from the man's embrace. It spread to the sky. And finally, it was so strong, it grew to a height of over 100 meters. The man loosens the soil and applies fertilizer. When the wheat is ripe, the grains of wheat fall like a rainstorm. Soon there are mountains of them on the ground. Men and animals jumping and dancing under the wheat trees, celebrating the hard-earned harvest. The man thought to himself, he has this wheat tree. He would have more than enough grain to eat. He became the richest man in the country. And so, it rained wheat grains all day long. And so the man harvested a yard full of grain. After that, the men's food was greatly improved. The brown rice became big fish and meat. It was the first time he had eaten such food since he was born. The man had changed after becoming rich and famous. Every day he would lie in bed and sleep. It's freezing outside at the moment. The wheat tree is swaying alone in the cold wind. The man doesn't want to care about it. When winter is over, when spring comes, the man takes the animals with him to visit the wheat tree. By the time they arrived, not only had the wheat tree not frozen to death, instead, it sprouted shoots. The men ran over to it in excitement, and jumped under the wheat tree, for he thought he was about to be rich again. But he was no longer as hardworking as before. He should have been watering the wheat. Instead, he slept in his thatched hut. Even when the wheat trees were dying of drought, he doesn't even care. But even so, the wheat tree endures the drought and the heat, forcing itself to ripen. At this moment, the men take the animals with them to collect grain. When they come to the wheat tree, the man swung his hammer and hit it hard. The grains of wheat fall like a rainstorm. The man is so absorbed in the joy of gathering the grain, he forgot that he was about to be buried by the grains of wheat. Fortunately, the old dog was able to dig him out in time. But before the man could rejoice for 2 seconds, suddenly he noticed that the grains of wheat looked like small stones. He grabbed some more and tasted it. The taste was extremely bitter. In a fit of rage, the man chopped the wheat tree off. It was already empty. At that moment, the god of the land also appeared before the man. He said it was his laziness that had caused all this. His fortune had been lost.